Please forgive me for being late, but I was in another meeting. I wish to extend my very sincere gratitude to all of you for so kindly being with us on this very auspicious and special Sunday festival day. The reason this strange-looking red curtain is blocking our view of the altar and consuming so much of the space of the temple room is that the pujaris are organizing for the pleasure of Radha Gopinath and all of the assembled devotees a beautiful, extraordinary darshan tonight. If you want to see it, you have to come. I was just back there, and it's incredible how a spirit of devotional service can empower people with such incredible creativity and enthusiasm. No one gets paid. And nobody gets prestige because nobody even knows who did what. But for the pleasure of the devotees and the pleasure of the Lord, devotees find the greatest joy and meaning in life. Today is Sarat Purnima, the full moon of the autumn season. In the Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada explains how many people of India consider that this is the most beautiful night of the whole year. What happened 5,000 years ago, approximately, when Sri Radha Gopinath were performing their eternal pastimes of the spiritual world on this earth in Sri Vrindavan Dham? As the moon was rising, we will explain something on that subject at the end of today's discussion. We'd like to begin by talking something about the month of Kartik. Today, according to the Gaudiya Vaishnava calendar, is the first day of the month of Kartik. The 12 months of the calendar, according to the Vedic system, each month is given a name of Krishna. But this particular month, Damodar, is also called Kartik. Kartik is a name of Srimati Radharani. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami tells that Urjavrat is the spiritual practices that that are prescribed during this month. Srimati Radharani is Urjeshwari, which means she is the supreme goddess of all the Lord's potencies. Our acharyas and our scriptures teach us that whatever spiritual practices are sincerely performed during this month, especially in Vrindavan, are specially blessed by Srimati Radharani. It is the time of the year wherein accessing the grace of Sri Radha, accessing the love within our heart, is made specially available if we take the opportunity. Of course, Srila Prabhupada explained that wherever there is a temple or a setting where devotees are gathered together in the common spirit of speaking about Radha and Krishna, chanting the glories of Radha and Krishna, and serving in the mood of Vrindavan, that place is also Vrindavan. So we are in Vrindavan now, by Srila Prabhupada's grace. And in a few days, many of us will be in Mayapur, which is non-different than Vrindavan. So many beautiful opportunities are being provided for our spiritual progress. During the month of Kartik, several very sacred festivals are honored. For today's class, I would like to very briefly discuss some of the events that we will observe during this month, with your permission. Today, the first day of Kartik is Sarat Purnima, which we will use as culmination for this class. But it is also the day of the disappearance of Murari Gupta, which is quite significant. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. Radha and Krishna appear as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this age of Kali. And just as many of Krishna's eternal associates assisted Lord Chaitanya in his pastimes, so did the associates of his many avatars. Murari Gupta is Hanuman. Hanuman represents selfless service. In fact, if you go to Vrindavan, even today, you will find in all the different sides of Vrindavan there are temples of Hanumanji. Because he is such an example of bhakti. He's the protector of the Dham. In fact, in Kurukshetra, Krishna's chariot, who was on the flag of the chariot? Everyone, very loudly, please. Hanuman. Thank you. So we can only approach Vrindavan, we can only approach the path of bhakti through this spirit of servitude. And Hanuman represents this spirit of service, unmotivated, uninterrupted service. So absorbed in Sri Ram that when he saw Sita putting, what is that called? Sindhu. She was putting it in that line of her hair. And Hanumanji asked, "Why are you doing that, Sita Devi?" She said, "Because it makes Ram happy." So the next day, Ram came to visit Hanuman, and his entire body was covered with Sindhu. He said, "Why have you done this?" He said, "Because Sita told me it makes you happy." His only motive was to make the Lord happy. One day he was crying in separation from Sri Ram. Someone asked, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Because I want to see Sita and Ram." They said, "Well, don't cry. They're in your heart." "They're in my heart." So monkeys have strong nails. He ripped open his chest. It was like an open heart surgery. He ripped open his chest, ripped open all his ribs, and went right to his heart, and then ripped open his heart. It really was open heart surgery. And he looked there, and there Ram and Sita personally appeared to give them their darshan, give him their darshan. And then everything healed immediately. There was no problem. Because he has a spiritual body anyway. But this is his absorption. When Ram needed a mountain, an herb, Ram wanted an herb, and Hanuman, he wanted to do so much extra service, he brought the whole mountain in which the herb was in. So Hanumanji represents unmotivated, uninterrupted service in which no obstacle will ever distract us. So many obstacles came before Hanumanji when he was trying to cross over the Indian Ocean to Sri Lanka to give Sita Ram's message. But he proved nothing could distract him. So we begin the month of Kartik by remembering Shri Hanumanji and being in this mood of unmotivated, uninterrupted service. And he appeared as Murari Gupta. We can give many classes on Murari Gupta. There's so much to be said. When Nimai, Lord Chaitanya, as a child, was playing his pastimes as a student, Murari Gupta was one of his classmates. And Murari Gupta was very much concerned with talking about Lord Ram, Lord Krishna. But Nimai would always be challenging people with grammatical puzzles. And the devotees wanted to run away because they didn't want to talk about all these materialistic things. But at the same time, Nimai was so beautiful, and because he was actually Ram himself, Murari Gupta couldn't give up his association. But Murari Gupta was such a scholar. They would debate. Lord Chaitanya would debate with him. Back and forth and back and forth. And Lord Chaitanya would sometimes defeat him. Then he would say, "Murari, go home, do your studies, come back and I'll have more questions for you tomorrow." And then Lord Chaitanya touched Murari Gupta. And with that touch, his heart literally exploded with ecstatic love. His entire body was thrilled, was trembling in divine ecstasy. Tears were pouring from his eyes. His hairs were standing on end. And he was thinking, this Nimai is not an ordinary child. Just by his touch, such potency to awaken love. And when Lord Chaitanya returned from Gaya and revealed himself as the greatest of all devotees, Murari Gupta was his constant associate and friend. During the Mahaprakash, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was fulfilling all the desires of all the devotees. He called Murari Gupta. And he said, Murari, look and see me. And suddenly, Lord Chaitanya transformed and revealed a darshan. He became Lord Rama with a complexion like durba grass, holding a golden bow. And on one side was Sita, on the other side was Lakshman. And there were thousands and thousands of monkey soldiers, all with folded palms, offering prayers. Then Murari Gupta looked down on himself and happened to see that he had a tail. He had become a monkey. And he fell unconscious. Then Lord Chaitanya called out, Hanuman, Hanuman! Don't you see that Ravana, what he has done? Go and give my message to Sita. And immediately, Murari Gupta got up in the mood of Hanuman, ready to serve. He said, Lakshman, don't you remember? Don't you remember who you are? He said, look at Lakshman. For his sake, you lifted the entire Gandhamadana mountain and flew thousands of miles with it. And look at Sita. Seeing her dilemma in the clutches of Ravana, you shed a shoreless ocean of tears of love for her. Now I am reminding you, I am Ram and you are Hanuman. Then he asked Murari Gupta, I will give you any benediction you like, whatever you ask. In the spirit of Hanuman, Murari Gupta only asked for one benediction. He said, I am very low. I am very fallen. I am very undeserving. But if you want to give me a benediction, just bless me with this, that in every birth I may take, allow me to be in the association of your devotees. Whoever considers you their master and they're their servant, let me be the servant of such servants of yours. That was his only desire, to be the servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord's devotees. Today is the disappearance day of Murari Gupta. One day, Murari was thinking of the various incarnations of the Lord. How Lord Ram, how he, toward the end of his Leela, well, it will take too long to discuss those details. But he was thinking that if Lord Chaitanya leaves, it will be unbearable to live. I don't want to see this final pastime of Lord Chaitanya. Therefore, before he leaves, I will end my own life. So he got a really sharp knife, specially for cutting conch shells. And he was planning to actually end his life with it. But Lord Chaitanya knows everything. He's within the heart of all living beings. One day he came, on that very day, he came to Murari Gupta's house and said, Murari, are you my servant? Murari said, yes, I am your servant. He said, will you do anything I ask you? He said, anything you ask, I am yours. He said, give me that knife. Murari said, "What knife? Who told you about a knife? There is no knife." He said, "I know that knife that you want to kill yourself with." He said, "My Lord, I can't bear the idea of your leaving me." And the Lord said, "Well, I cannot bear that you leave me." So Lord Chaitanya went right into his house and knew exactly where the knife was hidden, and he took it. And then Lord Chaitanya told him that I cannot live without my devotees. You are the pleasure, the joy of my life is to be like with devotees like you. In this way, the inconceivable, mysterious nature of the love between the Lord for the devotee and the devotee for the Lord. This is how the month of Kartik begins. In a few days is the disappearance day of Narottama Das Thakur, one of the greatest of the devotees of the Lord. The last lecture I gave on Narottama Das Thakur was 6 hours, so I'll spare you from having to go through that. Narottama Das Thakur was the son of a king, very, very wealthy person. And he was the heir to everything. But by hearing the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and hearing about the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his heart grew such a deep desire to go to Vrindavan and dedicate his whole life to the service of the devotees. Just by hearing about the devotees, he had committed his life to serve them and was willing to give up everything and anything for that blessing. And the more he heard about them, the more he was feeling pangs of separation. And knowing his heart, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally appeared to him and gave him his own love. Lord Chaitanya invested in Narottama Das Thakur's his own love, which is Radha's love for Krishna. And ultimately Narottama Das Thakur left everything and went to Vrindavan, where he took initiation from Lokanath Goswami, became best friends with Srinivasacharya Shamananda, and a student of Jiva Goswami. The history of his humility, his love, compassion, even upon people who hated him, who tried to destroy him, his ecstasies. Tens, hundreds, and thousands of people, from Brahmin scholars to murderers and dacoits, were transformed into pure, compassionate lovers of God by the influence of Narottama Das Thakur. And his songs, his poems, and his example are one of the deepest, greatest inspirations for Gaudiya Vaishnavas over the past 450 years. To love God means to love those who love God too. In fact, it means to love everyone. When Srinivasacharya disappeared from this world, Narottama Das Thakur was feeling such separation, such deep friendships, that he wrote that beautiful song, Jaya Nilo Premadana, which even today we sing for the disappearance of Vaishnavas. And when his very, very dear friend Ramchandra Kaviraj disappeared from the world, Narottam Das Thakur was in the forest, in the highest ecstasies of love in separation from the Vaishnavas. And one day, Ganga Narayan Chakravarti and one other devotee in the Murshidabad area, I think Gamvila, he went into the Ganges and he told the devotees, please take the water of the Ganges and pour it over me. And as they did, wherever the Ganges water touched, that part of his body turned into milk and merged into the Ganga. And they were weeping. They didn't want to put any more water on him. But he said, no, put, bathe me. And in this way, his body merged into Mother Ganga. And he returned to the spiritual world to join Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and all of their associates. Also this month is Birachandra, the son of Lord Nityananda Prabhu, who manifested such compassion. He was the compassionate energy of Lord Nityananda Prabhu. Beautiful story of once he came to Keturi Gram for one of the Gaur Purnima festivals, and he was dancing. Or this may have been Srikanda. He was dancing and dancing. And anyone he glanced upon, their love of God was awakening. There was one blind man who could hear the excitement of everyone watching Birachandra dancing. And he didn't say anything, but in his heart of heart, he was hurt about it. He said, I would give anything if even for 1 second I could have the vision to see him dance. This was the only desire in his heart. And the Lord reciprocates with our desires. At that moment, in front of everybody, a person born blind who never saw the light of day, suddenly his eyes opened. He had perfect 20/20 vision. But more than that, he had spiritual vision. And he saw the beautiful form of Birachandra glancing upon him, smiling. And the person began to dance in ecstasy. His life became perfect. Not only could he see, but he could see God wherever he looked from that day on. During this month is Bahulastami, the day that Sri Radha-kund and Shama-kund appeared within this world. After Lord Krishna liberated Aristasura, who came in the form of a huge demoniac bull, Srimati Radharani, she said to Krishna when he came to her that now you have killed a bull, a male cow, so you are contaminated by this sin, do not touch me. Krishna said, but he was a demoniac. He was in the guise of a bull. If I didn't do that, he would have killed all of you. She said, that's a detail. Whatever. Still, he was in the form of a bull. Well, what must I do? She said, you should go to all the holy places in the whole universe and take your bath. So Krishna, with his heel of his foot, he stomped it in the ground and made an impression. And then he personally called for all the holy places in the whole universe to personally appear there. And they all came personified with folded hands. And he said, please fill this kund with all of your waters. And they filled it. That was Shama-kund. Govindaji took his bath and then came out. And he said to Radharani, you took the side of a demon. Why don't you now purify yourself by taking a bath in my kund? And she said, I will not take a bath in your kund because the sin of killing cows is in your kund. I will make my own kund. So she found one of the hoof prints of Aristasura. And her and the Sakis and Gopis they took off their bracelets and broke them into like little shovels, and they were digging. And she made a chain of gopis that went all the way to Manasi Ganga. They were handing buckets of water. Seeing Radharani and gopis working so hard, Krishna was not happy. So he turned to the personification representing all the holy places in the universe. And that person came out of Shama-kund and approached Srimati Radharani with folded palms, bowed at her lotus feet, and prayed, please, I am the very embodiment of all the holy places in the universe. The only desire we have in our lives is if you bestow this supreme fortune and blessing upon us. We beg a benediction from you. Because he was so sincere, with such love, Sri Radhika replied, what is that benediction? And he said, allow us to fill your kund also. So she smiled and looked at Krishna and said, so be it. Then the water from Shama-kund overflooded and filled Sri Radha-kund. And Krishna told Srimati Radharani, as you are most dear to me, similarly Radha-kund is equally dear to me. And every day in the afternoon, Radha and Krishna, with their most intimate associates, perform their Rasa-lila and other such pastimes on the bank of Sri Radha-kund. Rupa Goswami, quoting from the scriptures, has declared to us that Radha-kund is the holiest of all holy places. Of all the planets within this universe, the earth is most holy, because so many of the avatars of the Lord come. Of all places on earth, Bharatvarsha, India, is very sacred because of so many of the pastimes the Lord has performed in so many incarnations here. And within India, the holiest place is the area of Mathura, where the source of all avatars, the Avatari, took his birth. And in all of Mathura, the holiest place is the forest of Vrindavan, where Krishna performed his most intimate pastimes. And in the forest of Vrindavan, the holiest place is Govardhan. And in the area of Govardhan, the most sacred of all sacred places in the entire creation is Radha-kund. The water of Radha-kund is the liquid love of Srimati Radharani. And just by seeing that water, touching that water, what to speak of bathing in that water, if we have proper consciousness to access that blessing, Radha's love fills our hearts and perfects our lives. On Bahulastami, at midnight, hundreds and thousands of Brijabasis and pilgrims will be there, taking their baths at Sri Radha-kund. Deepavali, or Diwali. It is the day in Ram-lila when, after 14 years exiled into the forest, Ram, Sita and Lakshman return to Ayodhya. And everyone welcomes them with the lamps of their love. For this festival, Yashoda Mai woke up very early in the morning because she wanted to churn special yogurt into butter for the pleasure of Krishna, Gopal, who was sleeping in his little bed. As she was churning, making butter. She would sing songs about Krishna's pastimes. See, Vrindavan, when Krishna was out herding the cows during the day, he would perform so many leelas. This is later on, of course. Or the calves. And the Gopas would tell all the other Brijabasis, and all day the next day they would just be remembering and composing beautiful songs about those pastimes. When Krishna was just a small child, Yashoda Mai was with him all day and all night. And practically everything he did, everything he said, was so absolutely charming. It was permanently imprinted in Yashoda Mai's heart. And her and the other gopis would compose beautiful poems just to help each other remember Krishna 24 hours a day. So she would be singing about Krishna. Not exactly to help them remember. More accurately, it was just an expression of their spontaneous love to compose these songs. And as she was singing about Krishna's beauty, Krishna's pastimes, immersed in remembrance of him, milk began to flow from her breasts. Now God is Atmarama. He's self-satisfied. God is not in need of anything. But his nature is he is always hungry for the love of his devotees. As that milk was flowing from Yashoda Mai, it was her motherly love for Krishna manifesting. Now, as has been explained so many times before, Krishna does not accept what you offer, but the intention in which it is offered. So many ladies throughout history, milk comes out of them. But it doesn't wake Krishna up. But Yashoda Mai, it was her love. That milk was her love. And Krishna was so thirsty for that milk that he woke up and came out of his bed, walked right over to Yashoda Mai and put one hand on the churning rod to stop her and demanded, "Stop all this other business and give me your milk." So her heart melted, and Krishna climbed up on her lap, and she began to feed him her milk. And oh, how he was enjoying that love. So beautiful. This is God, who in some religions appears as a very, very stern father who throws thunderbolts and destroys universes. Mahavishnu, Karunadakshay Vishnu, is only an expansion of an expansion of an expansion of an expansion of Gopal. And what happens when he sucks? Yes. Little Gopal was sucking Mother Yashoda's milk with all his might. He was really sucking enthusiastically. Mahavishnu, when he sucks, the entire universe goes into his belly. Not the universe, the entire cosmic manifestation, all the unlimited universes. So this is Krishna, conquered by the love of his devotee. Who's more lovable? Mahavishnu devouring cosmic manifestations, or Krishna crying for the milk of his mother? Should we take a vote? Mahavishnu. Say Hari Bol if Krishna is your vote. Yes, you are Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So Krishna was enjoying his mother's love. But then the milk started boiling over in the next room where she had milk cooking. And that was the very, very special milk, Padmagandha milk, that was sweet like lotus nectar, from the choicest of the cows of all Nanda Maharaj's herd. And that milk was so sacred, so fragrant, so nutritious. And she was making a special preparation just for Krishna on Diwali. So she put Krishna down so that she could save that milk so she can offer something so delicious to Krishna. It was all for Krishna. But Krishna wanted to attract the whole world for all time to come. So he was thinking why she has left. He wanted to teach the world that exclusive devotional service for the pleasure of Krishna is the highest perfection. So he appeared to be angry, and he took a stone and broke the pot that she was churning. Then he went to the next room, and he saw a grinding mortar. And he climbed up the grinding mortar, and there was some butter in a clay pot hanging from ropes from the ceiling. So he broke it open. He reached up and started to eat it, and then he called the local monkeys. And so many monkeys came into the house, or into the courtyard of Yashodamai, and Krishna was personally feeding all the monkeys. In his heart of hearts, he was thinking, in my past life as Lord Ramchandra, you risked so much to serve me by fighting that battle against Ravana, and at that time I was living in the forest and I had nothing to give you in return. So now come and take this butter. So the monkeys were enjoying, and Krishna was enjoying, and Yashodamai came back after saving the milk, and Krishna was gone. The pot's broken. Where is he? Then she saw his little tiny butter footprints on the floor. She followed them. And there, Krishna was on the grinding mortar, eating butter and feeding it to monkeys. And meanwhile, many of his friends were watching. And he was looking very nervously in all directions to see if his mother was coming. She picked up a stick. Not to hit him. She would never hit him. But she had to teach him a lesson. She wanted to show him the stick. Prabhupada in Gurukul, he said, never hit children, but you can show them a stick if they disobey. So, Mother Yashoda picked up a stick, and she was very quietly sneaking up to Krishna. The monkeys saw her, and they were so scared. They all started diving through the windows and diving away and running away. And then Krishna looked around and he saw his little cowherd friends all running away. Then he saw Yashoda Maya approaching him with stick. So he jumped off the grinding mortar and ran. Yashoda ran after him. He was running, she was running, he was running, and she was running. Flowers were falling from her hair. Some of the flowers were on Krishna's side, and some were on Yashoda's side. The ones that were on Yashoda's side, they said, they were thinking to themselves that she's having such difficulty catching Krishna. Maybe our excess weight is slowing her down. So they dove to the floor to make her lighter. And those that were on Krishna's side were thinking that she's going to catch Krishna and punish him. We don't want to be a part of this. So they jumped off. Ultimately, no one can catch Krishna. But by Krishna's own will, he was captured by his mother's love. And Krishna was crying. He was actually crying. And the kajal, the black mascara around his eyes, were mixing with his tears and was flowing and making streaks down his face and on his chest. His lips were quivering. And his limbs were trembling. His eyes were restlessly moving in different directions. He couldn't even look at his mother. And he cried out, "Mother, Mother, please put down that stick. I'm sorry. I promise I'll never do this again. Just give me another chance." Queen Kunti remembered this scene in great love. And she was glorifying Krishna. That he who is feared by fear personified was afraid of his mother.